Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Black Robe podcast. It's your girl Anjanae Slaughter here with the lovely Carol Mitchell, as always. How are you doing, Miss Carol?
I'm doing very well. I have had a whole week of women.
Of women, yes, it is Women's History Month. Yes, it's not my favorite month. I would say Black History next to my birthday month, next to Christmas. But I love so much about. You know what I love about Women's History Month, Carol, is that we're just not our the history of women in this country and in other countries just isn't celebrated enough. you know I think that we don't all of the strides that we have made and the achievements that we've made over time, previously and even now, just not recognized enough. It's
I agree.
it's
I
almost
agree.
like it's expected that we're supposed to bear kids and be the vice president of the United States. you know I'm like,
Well, you know that song, I can bring home the bacon and fry it up in the pan and never let him forget he's a man, right? That was a myth.
wow.
And I think,
I don't even know that song, Kara. I'm not
oh
even.
girl, you got to look that up. Oh,
It sounds
uh,
factual
one of my first jobs was working at what was formerly KTAC radio station. I'll have to tell you all about my radio days. They were pretty funny.
though. Yeah.
But so that was some song I'm sure that was popular at the time, back in the, I don't know, the 70s. But
Mhm.
I think this International Women's Day, which we just celebrated a few days ago, uh, when you stop and reflect upon the state of women across the world, there's a saying that whatever state women are in, that's the state of the whole country.
Mm,
And so if women are suffering, then the whole country is suffering.
yeah.
If women are thriving, treated equally, paid equally,
Hmm.
not victims of violence and sex trafficking and rape
Mm,
and miscegenation,
yeah.
then that country fares well on so many other levels. If you look at New Zealand with its prime minister, who
Mm,
their response in the pandemic was just legendary, how quickly they were able to get a handle on COVID-19, as opposed to our over 500,000 deaths here, led by number 45.
right.
I do think, too, that women, especially women in leadership and very public women like a Meghan Markle, for
Hmm.
example,
Yep.
um, suffer a lot from the expectation of both men and women of women.
Hmm.
The men expect the women they work with to behave like their wives and their daughters.
Hmm.
And the women sometimes expect other women to behave in a particular way that makes them feel comfortable. And when you don't, then, well, you're too masculine now,
Right.
right? Or you're too harsh. And African American women in particular, I think, get that kind of response from other women because we tend, as a rule, to be fairly self-assured and strong and confident and, verbal and outspoken
Right.
and direct. Some of us, I won't
Hmm.
say all because, nobody, no group is all the same. But I think, it sort of puts this enmity, this conflict between women at the center, when
Hmm.
we really should be celebrating each other's leadership, our differences in style. What you and I have been witnessing this past week or so is this dichotomy. You and I want to support women that are leading and doing
Yeah.
well, whether they're in a nonprofit social advocacy group or in the legislature. We want to support women. And
Exactly.
we especially want to support women that are helping Black folk, because that's what our organization is all about. But when you have these conflicts between women, it gets kind of tricky because you and I are just trying to do what's good for the whole community.
Yeah. And I think keeping that mentality, in the forefront, right? That we're doing what's best for the community and not for the individual is how we can indirectly support women that have different opinions, right? Because we know we take the person out of it. It's no longer a personal attack, right, on the individual if you're looking at what's best for the collective. And you're still empowering that all women by just listening. People don't realize how, you don't need validation from everybody, right? And I'm sure my dad
Mhm.
would say, I don't need validation from no man. we could talk about that in another episode or in a sense, but
That's right. I told you I can bring home the bacon and fry it up.
yeah, you know, but just listening to each other and being able to take in an opposing opinion, you know, and understand it, not listen to respond and rebuke and just be on the automatic defense, right? But actually listen to understand and kind of find that underlying reason, or what's the real issue here, right? Because we all come from the same community and we all have the same, of course I'm speaking, if we're talking about two Black women, right? We all come from the same community. We all want the best for our community, you know. So let's understand what you feel like will be the best, and then how I perceive it. And then who knows, we might be closer alike than, or in position, than opposing. Like,
Spent International Women's Day with two women from India, and one I've known for more than 25 years, the other one a lot less than that, maybe 3 years. One from northern India, one from southern India. And as you know, our Vice President Kamala Harris's mother is from southern India
mm-hmm,
as well. So the three of us noted the fact that here we were on International Women's Day in this very international conversation with each other. These three
mm,
women, one had grown up in Malaysia, although of Indian descent. The other grew up in Delhi. And of course, I grew up in Washington State, not nearly as interesting as those other two places. And so, arguably, you could say these two women from India are alike, and yet they were very different. They had very different political perspectives. One, as we listened, clearly more conservative than the other. And
mm-hmm,
the three of us, very different points of view. But to your point, being able to listen, and I like to describe listening as creating space to discover what I don't know.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when the two of them listened to one another and discovered what they didn't know about each other, they also discovered what they had in common.
Mm,
They discovered the differences, but they also discovered what they had in common. And that was the place where they could connect. It
yeah.
didn't mean that they couldn't have a different point of view. And I
Mm-hmm,
mean a strong difference on some things, right? But because they showed each other a level of respect as women and understood each other's experience in the world as Indian women in particular, they could have their difference and still enjoy each other's company and leave with that relationship intact. I want to
yeah.
share something with you from one of my favorite women, Shirley Chisholm. Our friend Larry Sequist, he's like psychic when it comes to the books that he sends me to read. And so he sent me this book about Shirley Chisholm, Unbought and Unbossed.
Mm-hmm.
She was the first Black woman to run for president in 1972. Were you
Wow.
even born?
No. My mom was born in 71.
Wow, your mama was 1 year old.
Yeah.
And she was on the Democratic ticket. She was the first Black woman elected to Congress, March 3rd, 1969. She said she was labeled a nonconformist, a troublemaker, and a maverick. I'm pretty sure that's on my resume too.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I like her so much.
Troublemaker for sure.
And here's what else she said that I totally adopt and agree with. She doesn't play by the rules because she knew the rules were all about power and control.
Mm, wow. That's
What's
really
your what's your feeling about that?
not playing by the rules. Well, I mean, when you look at the rules, they're not stacked they're not stacked for us, right? It's kind of like we had negative 200, we get negative $200 when we pass go. So if that's the rule, of course I'm not gonna stand by the rule. We got to create a whole new rule, one that's fair, right? And one that represents everyone from different backgrounds. I 100% agree with that, especially in the 70s. Women, even within the Black community, weren't, you know, even allowed to be leaders within the Black community, within the Black Panther Party.
Come
You
on
know,
now.
women were not allowed to be leaders. So she had to break the rules not only within our community, but then within larger society as far as where women should go. And then on top of that, where Black women should go. I believe the intersectionality between women and Black women, we got the double-edged sword. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
We not only looked at as we're supposed to be, this damsel in distress as a woman, we get that narrative, but then we're also Black women, so we're forced to be strong and independent, and I mean, we get it on both ends. And what do you think? Do you think Black women
Well,
get it the hardest, or do
I,
you
I,
think?
I, I do think I was in a conversation the other day, and I raised this question uh, about OMWBE, Office of Minority and Women Business Enterprises, and when would women stop being a minority group? Just
Mm,
the word, because it really means women who are not minorities.
mm,
And he raised the presenter raised a really good point. He said, some women, regardless of whether they are a racial minority, they come from these circumstances and very difficult lives and upbringings. And when they are able to overcome that, master it, and get into a position where they can run a business or lead, then we do want to encourage that. Um, and in some ways, those women are like the expectations that were imposed on Black women. We were really never allowed to be fully women because
right.
we worked right next to men.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me back to my trip to Ghana, though, when I think about women and what they go through and what they've suffered, especially in colonial strategy, let's put it that way.
Mm,
And the women who were in captivity, how uh, they were held up in front of the window of their enslavers' bedrooms with
mm,
their well-fed bodies and their clothes. They're held up in front of all the other women as if, they were the window dressers. That's
mm-hmm.
actually, where the term
That's
comes
what.
from, right?
Yeah.
And those women who knew full well they weren't free and yet were experiencing some of the benefits of being abused,
Mm,
it makes for a very complicated psyche.
yeah.
You know you're enslaved, you know you're a captive, you know you're being sexually manipulated and abused by your captor, and yet because there are benefits that flow from it, survival, kicks in.
Mhm.
And so, you know, you do what you have to do to survive. But what that does is it sets up a dynamic between women, right?
Yeah.
The window
Definitely.
dresser getting the benefits is being looked at by the captive who says, no, I'm not going to subject myself to that kind of abuse. And it
Mhm.
creates conflict between them. So, how do we ever really have a unified
Absolutely.
walk
I
between
hope that one
women?
day, and look, right. Exactly. How do we stand side by side? It's like Martin Luther King, right? I have a dream that one day women will stand side by side despite their race, because that's always what separates women is race.
Mhm.
At least in this country, race comes before gender. Unity uh doesn't happen across gender lines, you know. And we saw this in the women's suffrage movement, right?
Mhm.
And just as you were talking, women, I mean, even some would argue with the what is it, the women's march, right? And how
Mhm.
all the women, black women, white women, Asian women, women of all colors came and fought for our reproductive rights. But then when it comes to racial specific, such as Black Lives Matter, right? We didn't see as much, or even with the Hillary and Trump election.
Mhm.
You would have really thought that the polls would show that women stood together on these, but
Oh no, I mean I heard a lot of feedback that
mhm,
women did not show up in support of her as a I mean as a woman. Politics trumped gender in
yeah,
that
and
regard.
definitely. But it's just like,
Politics trumped gender.
yeah, like you said though, when is it gonna come a time where eventually we can stand, side by side, right? And because we are all women, because we know that when it comes to employment, and our wages, right, we're still not paid as much as men, you know. We still aren't allowed to step into these really, bigger leadership roles, or at least respected once we get into those roles. And you know firsthand, you were the senior counsel. That's an executive role as a black woman, something that you should be very proud of, you
Well, and
know.
when I first started there, I was paid $20,000 less a year than all of the other men. Now, we were all lawyers, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it wasn't until somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, did you know that if you work for the county, there's a document that shows you everybody's salaries, and you're making $20,000 less than the guy that's sitting in the office next to you, and you have 5 departments, and he has 0."
Wow. Yeah.
I didn't even know because I'm not a person that checks what other people make. You know, if
Right.
I'm being paid, what I thought was a fair salary, I don't go and ask, Anjane, how much money are you getting? Because it's not my
Yeah.
business. That's your business. But
Hmm.
women, that historically happens to women, that they can bring the same education, experience, or even more.
Right, I was gonna say,
But
yeah.
because we sometimes don't have that continuity of employment, because we take time out to take care of parents, take care of children, take care of ourselves, go back to school,
Right.
that lack of continuity in employment, employers use against us.
Yeah.
They treat that as a deficit. And because men historically don't take those breaks to take care of parents and kids and
Right.
most often themselves, they have more continuity. I was talking with a young man this past week.
Oh, you was talking with a young man, huh?
Yeah, I like young men. I sure do. I like old men too, but but I was talking to a young man. Actually, you know what? I like good men. So they can be old, they can be young. Good men. That's what I look for.
Okay, okay.
But we talked about the fact that barriers. His terminology was that HR is the new red line because
HR.
they throw up barriers to the progress of certain groups of people. And so, yeah, so you're a woman. Let's say
Mm-hmm.
you're in the trades.
Mm-hmm.
You wanna be a line electrician at the utility, but
Mm-hmm.
because you couldn't be in that job 40 years ago,
Right.
when time comes for promotional opportunities, it's going to be tough for you to compete because they require 10 years of experience for you to be the supervisor, well, you've only been in the career for 5 years at the time.
Yeah.
And so
Mm-hmm.
experience requirements, education requirements, looking at breaks in history, work history as a deficit, that
Right.
has a much more negative effect on women than
Yeah.
it does on men.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One thing that I'm seeing on a policy level here in Washington State is maternity leave being respected as it's
Finally,
paid. Finally, I know. And it took a year just to kind of get the funds so that the next year we could have it. And then it just so happened that I was no longer a W-2 worker. And I mean, I don't have any kids, nor was I planning on getting pregnant, but I was it's a nice
yeah,
benefit, and people need to know. Do not use your sick leave if you are if you're expecting or after you already have your baby. We have paid parental actually, so it's for the father and the
hmm
mother.
yeah, and the
Um,
fathers should take it.
yeah,
They need to bond with their babies too.
yeah,
It's a
mm,
bonding period. A
yeah,
lot happens between 0 and those first few months of life.
oh
Well,
yeah,
few years of life, 0 to 3. That is, your
mm-hmm,
child is just sucking up information right and left. And that bonding is critically important to that child's development.
yeah, definitely,
They
yeah,
need to hear their father. You know how they put the baby on the mom's chest, so that baby has heard that heartbeat for 6, 8, 9 months, whatever. And it just sort of is like, oh yeah, okay, this is that same heartbeat I've been listening to. Okay, I'm home, I'm safe. Well, fathers need to put those babies up there too, so
mm-hmm,
those babies can hear their daddy's heartbeat.
yeah. Plus, women, a lot of women face postpartum after they have their baby, and
Ooh,
after all that time, you sacrifice your whole life, for this growing
girl, my
child.
ankles were the size of tree trunks. If you can imagine a 5'3" woman with a big giant belly and ankles the size of tree trunks, that's some suffering. It's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
suffering that moms go through. And that sort of brings me to a particular woman and an interview that happened this week between Oprah Winfrey and Meghan Markle. She did a 2-hour interview with Meghan and Harry, and just the experience of that particular woman, very public wedding, very
Yeah,
public life, and the racism and hostility that she has gone through, the mental health
mm,
suffering that she went through and was unable to get the firm, they call it the firm, the business that actually runs the um, the monarchy's life and schedules it and handles it. The firm would not allow her to seek mental health treatment. So I guess I want to go on record to women as we celebrate women this month that first of all, if you are having thoughts of suicide, you need to call a crisis line, call your doctor, get some help, get some
yes,
intervention. Don't let the firm or anybody else
yeah,
diminish what you think you're going through and experiencing. And especially in her case, she had lost a child. and was dealing with all of this animosity and hostility around her. I mean, how awful would that have been for Harry to have lost his wife the way he lost his mother
Yeah. Oh my
because of
goodness.
the behavior of people who are more concerned with image and perception of the tabloids than they are with a human being that's a part of their family.
Hmm. Yeah. Please take care of yourself, guys. Mental health is so important. And I know that it's far too often, especially in the Black community, our mental health is dismissed, right? We're not,
Well,
uh,
women in my family, we didn't have time to be, it was unacceptable for, I just think about my mother with 9 children. I never saw her take a nap. She was up
yeah.
when I got up in the morning. She was up when I went to bed at night.
Hmm.
It's like, when did this woman sleep ever? Non-stop cooking and cleaning and
Yeah. I gotta say,
taking care of folk.
right. I gotta say, I have the same, reflection of my mom, only with 2 kids, but still working 2 jobs, going to school to get her nursing degree, and still trying to take us to track and field or
Right.
team, and still found time to volunteer for the community. Like I don't know how she did it, but I feel like it's still something that shouldn't be normalized. We shouldn't just be expected to be this like Wonder Woman because I mean we are wonderful, but it's hard work. It's a lot of grind, and it seems like it's just something that's kind of just like, oh well, I'm not impressed. All of you women are just, you shoot, Harriet ran back and forth, all the time. I mean, that's just what y'all do. Y'all are just some strong people.
Well,
But
and
we,
I think that's part of the dynamic. And you're right that women, especially women who have had to raise children, work, try to move forward in their own lives and career. It's okay to rest
yes.
sometimes and to say no. A friend of mine sent me a note and said, "Help! I need some advice, because she's a caretaker of one of her family members who is legitimately ill." And I said to her, the word no is the most therapeutic thing you can do for yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, how
No.
will you take care of her? That's been hard for me too, because I am a notorious caretaker, problem solver, you know,
Yeah.
the swooping in to rescue everybody. And now I think as women, we have to sometimes just rescue ourselves.
Definitely. We got to recharge so that we can keep doing the work that we're doing. If we don't, we're just going to burn out, and we got to keep going in whatever fight that we're fighting, or, even if it's just waking up every day to go to work, whatever that fight is, you're not going to get very far doing it if you do not take the time to, treat yourself. Talk about self-care,
Hmm.
it is important to, whether you think going and getting your nails done is your form of self-care, your hair, or just
Getting
yeah,
fried, dyed, and laid to the side. Laid to the side.
we gotta care for ourselves. That's our recharge so that we can keep the grind going. That's what I
Yes.
believe. But there's
So
so many women that are just doing amazing things out here, and part of Women History Month and International Women's Day, I think, Carol, let's shout some women out that are just doing some remarkable things in the community. Let's empower some women, uplift some women. Is there anyone that comes to mind for you?
well, I do want to give some credit to, of course, Jamila Taylor, who is leading the Black Members Caucus down in the legislature. to Senator Tawana Nobles, who is getting through really critically important bills that are going to affect uh, individuals who have substance use disorders and their sentencing in the courts. Even Representative Melanie Morgan, who is pushing hard for tenant protections. I just want to give them credit for the great work that they're doing. I want to shout out Sakara Rimu, who is running the Washington Alliance for Black Lives Matters. They have a machine that is helping to make sure that a lot of the legislation around police conduct and police accountability actually gets through. Um, I am noticing that my computer is getting low on energy. So you better hurry up and do your shout out before we
All right,
lose
well,
our power.
there's so many to name, but for the sake of time, I'm gonna just really highlight one individual, right? Quality over quantity in this one. This woman, she's just amazing, has been a mentor in my life since as long as I can remember, as long as I've been active in my community, probably predates high school for me. But not only myself, she's really left an imprint on so many young people of color in King County and that have moved now and making strides all over the country. I mean, she really is selfless and puts people before herself all the time. Even, I mean, it takes a lot to sacrifice your individual gain for the helps of a child. With her work in the foster care system, with Casey Family, and just all throughout the state. Really, I got to give
What's
my
her name?
to Don Bennett.
All right.
Yes, I know. I was trying to tease it. I had to build.
Okay.
But yes, Dawn Bennett, she's running for mayor of Kent, which is right now is the most concentrated city full of Black people. So that's where there's the biggest proportion of us in the state. We really need representation and leadership. She's a strong, obviously female. This is Women's History Month, so let's get a Black woman as the mayor of Kent. That'd be amazing.
I love that. And we'll acknowledge our own, of course, I forgot my friend, Congresswoman Strickland, and our own Mayor Victoria Woodards. We want to shout out to them too for the great work that they're doing. We got to close, my dear. So I'm hoping that you don't play by the rules if you don't have to.
Oh, no.
Be a nonconformist, be a troublemaker, be a maverick. Take good care of your body, mind, and spirit. Get some rest.
Yes.
Let go of perfectionism, all those things that wear us out as women. And let's make room, like you said, to listen, to create space, to discover what we don't know and what we have in common with other women. I love you.
I love you too, Miss Carol. Thank you so much for creating space for a young woman like myself. You really are. I gotta highlight you. This is Women's History Month, and you are definitely breaking down barriers and making strides for women, Black women. You are a true mentor and friend of mine. I mean, someone that I truly look up to. I have great respect for you, Miss Carol. Everything that you've done, even from raising kids and continuing your education and being the only Black woman in high positions of power and leaving those positions of power to uplift other Black women. I can go on and on and on, but thank you so much. And there's so many other Carols out there, so many
right.
Others, and we got to thank you guys all for just making space for other women. So thank you. Do not forget Freedom Summer Symposium, June 28th through 30. We got some advertisements coming out. So stay tuned for that, guys. Super excited. I cannot wait. All righty, guys. We'll see you next week. See ya.
We tired of talking, got Black bodies riding in jails and in coffins. Said we tired of talking, got black bodies riding in jails and in coffins. Nobody coming like we do, started it over like we do. Still fighting for better ways, cause nothing's out getting more lethal. Baby, you're scared of my baby, we was not meant to be equal. I know there's better days, but it's up to you to receive them. For years I ain't complained, I ain't never changed.